everyone, Comic Reviewer here, this time reviewing on Star Wars Dark Times, issue number 1. Now, as you know, Star Wars Dark Times is meant to cover the rise of the Empire back in the original timeline, and was meant to feature a Jedi known as Jenna, who was basically the original version of Kanan from Star Wars Rebels. And pretty much the cover has Jenna with Bomo and his people against the Empire. And the story starts off with Darth Sidious talking to a senator saying, "I'm sorry, Senator Baelix. The Imperial throne cannot interfere in local politics. What's next?" And pretty much pointing out everything that's been going on, and even the sort of taking of separatist planets that are nearly complete. And of course, we see him saying, "Anything else past stage? Excellent." And of course, this is pretty much where he tells his officials to go now, and him and Darth Vader talk, saying, "Or are the lessons of Kestrel so soon forgotten, apprentice? Given in to your emotion nearly led to your destruction, Master I." And pretty much he points out about tracking down the Jedi and leading the 501st, as well as Anakin Skywalker's former master. And again, I kind of like the idea that it's Darth Vader hunting down the Jedi and not the Inquisitors, because they made it clear that Darth Vader was meant to be more dangerous now, and like what Obi-Wan said, he was more machine than man. And even remembers back when he was still Anakin with Padme. And you can tell this is where I think Darth Vader still feels responsible for Padme's death, and showing some guilt in that for what happened to her. We also see on a former separatist planet where the Resistance group are taking on the Stormtroopers that are former clone troopers. We see the former Jedi Jenna saying, Bomo, can you hear me? What's the status?" And we see how Bomo's leading his family and the other refugees out from the planet, and tells his daughter that he will come and find them, and promises that. And we see him saying, "A family. Papa, the carrier's moving. Misa, take any ship you can, and make for Solist. I'll find you. And of course we see him heading off back to the battle. And we see how the clone troopers, now stormtroopers, are taking down Bomo's people. And we kind of see how Jenna's trying to read commands with the former separatist soldiers. And of course, decide to kind of get an advantage. So using his lightsaber, manages to cut down the trees that destroys the tanks. And we see him saying, "Bomo, stick with me. Everyone fall back. Make for the crest of the hills. Make for the Redricks. The General has a plan. Don't fall for the same trick again. Target the next tree in line." And of course, we kind of see how when the blast happens, we see how Jenna and Bomo end up falling to the pursuit's death. And we see how the stormtroopers massacre Bomo's people. And we see how they come to and decide to get out quickly. We see how back at the command camp, we see how the stormtroopers are talking about everything that's now happened and taken care of. And we kind of have this sense that the clone troopers are wondering what's going to be left of them now and what's going to be left. I kind of like the idea that they were aware of Order 66 and wanted to kind of believe what they were doing was right, as I think we didn't need the command ships. And we see how they both managed to get up, and of course, we see how Bomo sees to his shock and horror that they killed all their troops, and they have to kind of get out quickly and kind of make sure their sacrifice wasn't in vain. We see how they make it to the kind of command docking bay area, and seeing the sort of former clones now patrolling the area, and make it to the docking yard where the ships were supposed to kind of take them to other, but now they're all deserted, and wonder why hasn't Bomo's other refugees haven't come. And of course, they kind of managed to get into one of the ships in time. And we see how, after a misunderstanding, we see how the captain of the ship welcomes them and points out the crew in hand. And we kind of see how Jenna welcomes himself, as well as being a Jedi, saying, "Have sex pass? If you survived, then you must be the only ones." And points out that, yeah, it is correct, and that no one else had came, but it turns out from Bomo, when he learns from one of the crewmates that the Empire captured all of Bomo's people and are being sold as slaves, much to Bomo's dismay. And I think, in my opinion, the first issue definitely works. I think, to me, this is where I think Dark Horse knew what they were doing with the stories, as we didn't need the Inquisitors, we didn't really needed the Jedi getting too badly massacred. It showed you that some of the Jedi did survive Order 66, some would have joined forces, others would have tried to kind of stay alive during the Dark Times, and I think the point of Palpatine and Darth Vader being the only two that were hunting the Jedi made sense, as Palpatine's plan was effect, and it was kind of clear that Darth Vader was more machine than man, like Obi-Wan said. And it gave you the sense that during the early issues, Darth Vader did have signs of regret for what happened to Padme, and blaming himself for her death. So I think this issue definitely deserves a thumbs up. Still good, and still alright. So, Comic Reviewer here, signing out.